23-year-old, unemployed, single mother.
All right.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I'm a 23-year-old, unemployed, single mother. The Mike Brown situation caught my eye because I have an 18-year-old nephew named Mike. Same height, same build. The only thing is that instead of them killing my nephew, he was beat up and he was jailed. My fight comes from my son. I look at my 3-year-old every day and just hope that in the next 15 years I don't have to bury my son because I don't want to. I don't want to have to go through the pain of, I don't even know how to explain it, but I just don't want to do it. I go out and I protest every day because I think it's a responsibility, it's a parent responsibility for me now. If I don't go, I feel bad. Because I feel like I'm giving up on him. My 3-year-old is over there.
That's right.
I don't want to give up on him. I want to give up on my son. I don't want to give up on anybody's child. Because the situations we have been through since August 9th is horrible. I have been called everything but a child of God by police officers. I was locked up for endangering the welfare of a child. Mine. I take my son with me everywhere. Everywhere. Nigel does not leave my side and he don't want to. Okay. This is important to us. Because if we don't do it, who else gonna do it?
That's right.
And it seems like, I guess it's a fight for everybody, but more importantly now it's a fight for us because we're on front line more than the people that's older than us.
Be honest.
Sometimes we feel like we don't have the support of the generation before us. Because y'all are supposed to be giving us the direction of where we're supposed to be going. What we're supposed to be doing. But mom, we're supposed to be fighting, and we don't. So we do what we know best. We go out, we scream, we yell, we fight. We ain't scared.
Right.
I ain't scared today, and I'm not gonna be scared tomorrow.
I know that's
That blue uniform means nothing to me.
right. I know that.
Because at the end of the day, we get buried in the same ground.
Yes.
I don't have much to say. It's just, we not gonna stop. If I have to fight for the rest of my life for my son to be treated like they treat their kids,
That's right.
I'm gonna fight for the rest of them.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul, and it's kind of hard to follow all the speakers, but first and foremost, I just want to say thank you, Ms. Pamela, for having us and everything, and thank everyone that's out here today for coming out and listening. Then secondly, I just want to say, I just want to honor them, like the women, my mother, and all the women right here, Miss Beverly, Miss Shelley, because when we be out there, most of the time, I mean, there's a lot of men out there too, but these women be out there, like when they say they're not scared, they're really not scared, they're willing to die for their kids, for their kids, their male kids, all their kids, and that's just, a lot of inspiration for me. Like, I started this fight for justice a while ago. As you heard Bishop say, police killed my brother in April of 2013, April 24th to be exact. My brother's name is Kerry Ball Jr. He was shot by the St. Louis City Police around the corner on 8th and Carter. He was shot a total of 21 times, handcuffed and dragged by the curb. He was targeted, stalked, and then murdered by the police while his hands were up. After being shot 21 times, with 18 of which of those were shot while he was already on the ground. We weren't notified. We had no idea until my little sister seen it on the news that next morning. Nobody contacted us, you know. They actually never told us. We had to call the city morgue ourselves, and that's how we were able to identify that my brother had been killed. And ever since then, we've been fighting. We protested. We made trips up to Jefferson City. We've been doing a lot. So when August came, and the very first day when I heard about it, it touched me so much because it's personal for me, you know what I'm saying? By losing a brother, my brother, like, me and my brother was best friends. He was nothing but a year older than me, and know all the plans we had for the future. So when I seen that, and also looking at another mother, it's like looking at my mother, I seen the pain and seeing that another son, you know, another one of our brothers' lives had been taken by the hands of the people that are supposed to protect and serve. It was my duty to, you know, get out there. And when I seen, you know, I seen his mother's face reminded me just of my mother's face, his father. And what was crazy is that actually at the funeral, his mother and my mother did the exact same thing, just like now. All she did was rock the whole funeral like Mike's mother did. And my father did exactly what his daddy did. He just let out a big roar right before we left the funeral. It was just like everything just seemed so much of the same. So we got out there August 9th. You know, I knew that this was gonna be a hard fight. And like he said, came August 10th, the earlier day, the whole day we were peaceful, real peaceful. We were antagonized, we were provoked, we were, like I said, harassed, and I said again, we were stalked by them. And if you know what a dog does when he's constantly being picked and then put back into a corner, or it's like volcano erupting. You know all this pressure is sitting there. It's sitting there. But you're trying to ignite this because you want people, the world, to see, oh, look at what they're doing, look at what they're doing. But you don't show the 7 or 10 hours of peaceful things we were doing before. They antagonized us and started calling us out our names, throwing things at us and putting dogs on us. And we saw a picture out there from 1964. And then there's a picture of last year, 2014, that looks almost exactly the same, with the dog standing in there. So it makes us feel like we still have a long way to go. And like I agree with what you just said, like, we just really, like that's one thing I want people to know. We are open for all the advice that comes from the elders, you know, because a lot of people think, okay, I can't talk to them, they don't want to listen. And some of the time, even though we have our own advice, you know, like, we can still learn from each other. It's not just a one-way street. Wisdom comes with experience, not age. So we can all help each other collectively. So it's just a lot that we need to do. And so after August 10th, some more people were killed. Kajeen Powell was killed the next month. We protested. Then after that, Miss Sarita Myers, her son was killed on Shaw. Von Derek Myers, he was killed. We went out there, we were beat out there, we were tear gassed out there, we were maced, we were harassed, and it's nothing they can do short of killing us to make me go in the house and make me stop doing what I'm doing, because I want you all to be able to live the rest of a peaceful life while we all still living. I would like to see them grow up, grow old. I'd like to see myself grow old. I'd like to become a grandfather. I don't want to be, a statistic. I would like to see these kids, like the young kids, grow up in a world where they actually are entitled to, where they actually get justice. Because a lot of people misunderstand and think equality and justice is the same thing. Equality and justice is two different things. We all equal because we're sitting on this panel, but justice will be to push them up a little bit more higher, then we're actually even. You understand what I'm saying? So we just, all we want is our due process. Like, there were things that people may have done wrong, people who were killed, but there's a different way of handling it. The thing that we fight most for is that as black males, we don't get our due process. We are immediately killed. If I do something wrong, take me to jail. Give me my due process. Do not stand there and hold court on me just because you know you have the right to. It's not, like I know they say they always want to use the excuse of they fear for their life. Even though you can never tell a person they fear for their life, but they know there's a loophole, there's a law that they can hide behind, even when we know they are wrong. Just like in the Eric Garner situation, we watched it. We watched it, and there still was a law out there that still protect those cops that choked him. So the body counts and everything are good, but if we don't have those laws changed, then what good is, we just gonna keep seeing people die in the hands of police officers. We need those laws to be changed. So we need this system to be destroyed, not reconstructed. It needs to be destroyed and rebuilt all over.
That's right.
Because if we don't, we should be going nowhere. And so that's like collectively, like you said, we need the people like us who's out there all the time. The soldiers, the people who, that the legislators and the lawyers and everything. This is like she said, this is a blue issue, not a black and white thing. It's a class issue, it's a blue thing. We poor people, like we know that they don't go out to Ladue and Baldwin and kill people. They only kill them in our community because there's a law that they can hide behind. There's still a law that allows them to get off. And so, basically, well, that's it. That's all I'm saying.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I am Ayana. Let's see. The fight for me. August 9th, I was actually on my way to the mall, spend some money, of course. And I got on Facebook, and I'm reading statuses, updates, and everything. And I see unarmed teen shot and killed in Canfield. Canfield, unarmed teen shot and killed. Okay, I'm about 2 blocks away. Let's drive to see what's going on. So we get over there, and it's a million people out. We're roped off. We can't get in to see what's going on. We don't really know everything. The media is saying one thing. The people out there are saying another, of course. And from there, I've been out there every day. I actually used to stay in Canfield. So it kind of hit me hard from the beginning. I have a 4-year-old son.
You all right? You all right?
I'm sorry. Okay. So I explained to him what happened. My baby, he looked me in my eyes and he asked me, "Mommy, am I gonna be next?"
Oh my God.
That is the hardest thing to hear from your child. He's 4. At that time, he had just turned 4. He's 4 in June. is nothing in this world that can stop me from being out there. Nothing. My baby shouldn't have to ask those questions. He shouldn't even have to understand that. I shouldn't have to wake up every day and tell him, you know, baby, I'm gonna see you later, and not know if I'm gonna see him later.
Right.
I shouldn't have to feel like that. So I'm out there constantly, just fighting in the face of these police for them to understand. For them to understand that my baby matters. He deserves to grow up and not be afraid of people I also have brothers. He wants a pen. How you doing, Angel? I also have 4 brothers, all adult males, black, of course. My oldest brother, he has been shot by the police. He's been beaten by the police. He's been free-cased by the police. He's an ex-police. Yeah, he is. They have like a little code. Once you tell on someone that's doing wrong, they don't care about you anymore. It doesn't matter. It's really a blue issue. It's a fraternity. They're a cult. And until, like Carlos said, the laws are changed to where they are being accountable for their actions. They're being held accountable for their actions. It's not gonna stop. And that's just the truth. And so I thank you, Ms. Means, for letting us speak with you guys, you know, talk with you guys. I appreciate the laws and the things that you guys are coming up with to help us. Cause it's hard. I have another story. So I have a yellow vehicle. Everybody knows my car. I was followed from Ferguson all the way to Berkeley. If anybody knows where that is, it's about 2 miles. They're out of their jurisdiction. They don't know who I know. So I called my godfather, who is the ex-police chief in U City. I'm like, hey, Ferguson's following me, or whatnot. And he's like, okay, I'll handle it. The call that they got was, get her. She's been out here antagonizing us. Get her. You're out of your jurisdiction. You can't arrest me. That's how I feel, or whatnot. And I have no clue what they were gonna do. It was 2 older guys in a car. I'm by myself. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Something has to be done, because they're not gonna stop. Anita, her situation, they locked her up. The guy wasn't even from Ferguson. He told her they've been waiting on her since August. We are targets. We need help.
Yes.
We don't know what else to do. And it is what it is. Also, we're trying to get into our communities to help the kids. We don't really have any resources. No one is willing to help us. We come out of pocket. We've lost jobs. I just started working on Monday after 6 months. They're both unemployed. What are you saying? We really just need help. I'm tired, but I can't stop fighting. But I'm so tired. So tired. This is so good.
I want to give that panel another round of applause. Sincerely want to thank you for the burden, for carrying the sacrifice, and for everything that you're doing to make sure that this is not a lost moment in time. That we're at the intersection of a very critical point in the history of this nation, and what this movement represents is as critical to our future as anything, and we thank you, we applaud you. Moving on with our program into our final panel, again, we wanted the ending note to really be about strategy. At the end of the day, the quote that I'll use for this section is out of the book of Matthew. And it basically says that we'll know you by the fruits you bear. Right? And so what that represents to me is that as members of the NBA, we put it out there, we've talked about the history. We've heard directly from the voices of the people who are on the front line what this experience is. Now, what are we going to do about it? You see, one of the differences about the youth in this generation is that they're all from Missouri. Because they're saying, NBA, I don't care what you put on your pamphlets. They're saying, show me. Right? And so that element of now ending with a very strategic conversation about things that we can do as a bar, as African Americans, as people who care about these issues, and as people who care about these youth. What are some strategies that we can do? We've already had preliminary conversations yesterday on some of the conference calls that we've had. I know that President Means is trying to set up what would be sort of a virtual legal clinic, because as you heard here, there are social issues that these young people are dealing with. There are legal issues that they're dealing with, and I would dare say also psychological issues as a result of their own version of PTSD from what they're experiencing from being on the battlefield on a daily basis. We need to make sure that we're providing that kind of wraparound support for these young people as they continue in the struggle. So with that, it's my pleasure to move on to our strategists, who will now talk about the issues from an educational perspective. Again, we are intentionally teasing out this theme around the efficacy of schooling and what it represents as an impediment for our kids and what should be the greatest resource and gift that they could have. It is on one hand for some kids a blessing, for our kids it is ending up a curse. So we want to address that and talk about strategies that we're thinking about deploying in terms of improving the quality of education for our youth, talking about issues of access, and also dealing with the cultural context in terms of why it is that black kids who are disproportionately tracked into special education never get out, what that represents in terms of their future. And again, it's really fascinating that the greatest indicator as to whether or not a youth will have an incarceration experience is not by zip code, but by educational classification. So we have to address these issues. And to do that, we're going to have Janelle George from the Educational Policy Council. We will have attorney Veronica Harold James, who is the Assistant U.S. Attorney from the Southern District of Florida. And then I wanted the panel to end with the voice also of one of our youth who is out there organizing, who is civically engaged, and who is a board member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and also a Ferguson native. And we will end with Brother Gasky, who's on the end there. So Janelle, I'll pass it down to you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank my co-panelists who've just been phenomenal. Trying to pull myself together here. I also want to thank the National Bar Association and President Means, who has elevated really the issue of education as a civil right, and elevated and expanded the involvement of everyone here, especially our young leaders. And I applaud her and thank her for that. Education really is a civil rights issue of our time. And I'll start briefly with a quote. Before I get into strategies, Dr. Youngblood started by saying that context matters. And context really does matter. So I do want to cover a little bit of the scope of the problem before getting into some proposed solutions. But one quote is that one of the most consistent findings in educational research is that students achieve in direct proportion to their opportunity to learn. So when students are pushed outside of the classroom, when they're suspended, when they're expelled, they don't have an opportunity to learn, and they don't have an opportunity to achieve. I work for the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. It's a civil rights organization founded by the late Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall over 75 years ago. Many know LDF as an organization that litigated Brown versus Board of Education over 60 years ago, but 60 years later, we still see the same vestiges of segregation and discrimination in our public schools. And as we meet here today in Missouri, a recent study by the UCLA Center for Civil Rights Remedies found that Missouri, among all states in the country, has the highest gap in disparities between black students and white students for suspensions and expulsions. And when we put that again in context, and we realize that classrooms are really a reflection of what we see happening in society. So the same bias, the same stereotypes, the same discrimination that's perpetuated in society is reflected in our classroom. So it's no mistake that here in Missouri, where we see political disenfranchisement, where we see police brutality, where we see really terrorism on people of color, we see the same thing happening in the public schools through a phenomenon many of us term school pushout. And school pushout refers to any kind of policy or practices that push students out of the classroom and out of the general education classroom and either into the juvenile justice system or out into the streets, that undermines and compromises their educational outcomes and their life outcomes, holding them into or preventing them from participating in high-wage jobs and really being productive in our economy. So that's why this matters. That's why things like suspensions and expulsions and school discipline matter. I want to share a few statistics before getting into some strategies though, because again, context matters. African American children without disabilities are suspended or expelled at 3 times the rate of their white counterparts. This is despite research showing, and some people are surprised by this, but this is over 40 years of research shows, African American children do not misbehave more frequently or more severely than their white peers, yet they are sanctioned more frequently and more severely. And that's key, because a lot of people have this idea, well, maybe the black kids are just bad. They're just misbehaving. No, they're not. Research, and people have done really considerable research on this. Again, black children misbehave at the same rates as their white peers, but they're sanctioned more severely and more frequently. Another misconception is a lot of people think these are violent offenses. Children are bringing guns to school or having drugs in their locker. No, these are offenses like dress code violations. Dress code violations. Or a category, a really broad category called willful defiance or disrespect. Disrespect can be anything from rolling your eyes to turning your head to, I mean, what is that? And honestly, it varies culture by culture. Some people have this stereotype that all black children are loud or aggressive or threatening. So the same racial biases and stereotypes that play out in our communities and in our streets play out in our classrooms. And so when we see these broad discretionary disciplinary categories like dress code violations or disrespect, that's when teachers have the opportunity, whether it's conscious bias or unconscious bias, to exercise that bias. And that's where we see more of the disparities playing out. I mentioned that Missouri has the worst gap in between black and white suspensions. But I want to talk briefly again about some of the other, to give you some examples. In the Normandy School District, a preschooler was sent home indefinitely for wetting his pants during nap time. There were second graders here in Missouri who were disciplined for participating in a snowball fight. In Riverview Gardens, 4 suspensions were issued to first graders who brought toy guns to school. In St. Charles, 3 suspensions were issued to kindergartners and first graders who failed to follow instructions. And again, these are all things that normally would be handled in the classroom in the context of learning. It could even be a teaching tool. I don't know what's happened in terms of how we frame school discipline. It should be something that's contextualized within education. It's used as something to teach and instruct, not push out and suspend and expel. African American children nationwide are 18% of preschoolers, but they comprise 48% of preschoolers who received at least 1 out-of-school suspension. For preschoolers, what does a preschooler really do that warrants being suspended? It's also important that we disaggregate this data by race and gender, because when we do that for African American girls, we find that African American girls are suspended or expelled at 6 times the rate of white girls. And the Legal Defense Fund and the National Women's Law Center recently did a report on African American girls in education, because girls in particular, and this is not to take anything away from what black males are going through, because we all know that all of our children are impacted. But African American girls are particularly at an interesting position, right? Because they're vulnerable to both gender discrimination and racial bias. And it plays out. We see African American girls who are suspended or expelled for wearing natural hair. For dress code violations, they're told that your clothes are too tight or they don't fit right, or that you're too loud, you're too aggressive. These are all code for not conforming to prevalent societal notions of femininity. That's all it is. It's telling African American girls that you don't fit in, and telling all students that you don't belong in the general classroom. And that's the wrong message. And again, while the sanctions or these perceived violations may be minor, like dress code violations, the consequences are great, because educational and life outcomes are completely undermined. In Kirkwood, African American students make up 14% of enrollment, but constituted 71% of suspensions. In Ferguson, Florissant schools, black children make up 80% of enrollment, but 92% of suspensions and expulsions. And in Lindbergh, black students make up 14% of enrollment, but 16% of last year's suspensions. And I explain why this matters. It matters because life outcomes are undermined. So the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention did a study showing out-of-school youth are more likely to be retained a grade, drop out of school, become teen parents, and engage in delinquent behavior. And what's really contradictory is that students who are late or truant are suspended or expelled. So you're being penalized for not being in school by being pushed out of school. So we kind of have to rethink this, because it's not making sense. Right? And again, it's undermining life outcomes and really undermining the economic health of our nation. So that's something we have to think about. Another interesting thing is the findings also show students who have historically been disadvantaged. So African American students, students with disabilities, LGBTQ students are the same ones who are targeted for these overly punitive discipline practices. And again, if we know that our classrooms are a reflection of society, that's not really very surprising. So what are some of the solutions? And this might seem a little bit contradictory to be here at the National Bar Association mid-year conference and to say, I think it's time that we actually look outside of the legal system. And we start examining some extra legal remedies. Because within our legal system, we're unfortunately very limited, right? States and localities have traditionally been given a lot of deference by the courts in terms of how they handle discipline and expulsion. And there's this historical theory that states and localities know best how to run their schools. So even if you want to bring a due process claim or try to challenge that, it's very difficult to do. It's extremely difficult to do. And also because the power to suspend or expel really varies from state to state, from locality to locality, and it's informed by local decision making. Again, it's given deference by the courts, and it's very, very hard to challenge. So in the higher courts, a strict scrutiny or higher scrutiny standard is only applied when actual racial animus is shown. And we all know it's very hard to show racial intent, right? It's much easier to show racial impact, disparate impact upon a certain population. The statistics, the data, help us tell that story. But even given a lot of the data that I just shared, a lot of people still aren't convinced, and a lot of the courts still aren't convinced. In fact, there was a ruling in a case called Alexander versus Sandoval, in which the U.S. Supreme Court foreclosed effectively the private right to bring a claim for disparate impact. So we depend on the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights to bring claims. And there are two claims that can be brought. One is under Title IV of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination within our U.S. public schools. Title VI of the U.S. Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination by recipients of federal funding. I have to be honest and tell you that, LDF has brought some Title VI claims. Sometimes these claims can take months or years to be resolved. And in the meantime, the students are still being subjected to discrimination. They're still being pushed out of school. Their lives are still being affected while the litigation, and while these actual claims are pending. So there are real capacity issues, right? We understand that the federal government, and I know that my co-panelists will speak to this, has limited capacity, right? And so it's not for lack of understanding. In fact, the U.S. Department of Education and U.S. Department of Justice issued historic joint discipline guidance to put states on notice of their civil rights obligation to practice non-discriminatory discipline. That's historic. That's basically the federal government saying, we are acknowledging that we're seeing disparities in how discipline is administered. We're seeing the effects on African American students, students with disabilities, and LGBTQ students, and they provided recommendations for states and jurisdictions to actually implement. But what has really been the most effective, honestly, are students and parents who have advocated and called for change. And one example is in Los Angeles, the LA Unified School District, which had horrific discipline disparities, and especially again in these discretionary categories. They had a category called willful defiance. So if you rolled your eyes, you could be expelled or suspended from school. And so what the students and parents did is they advocated, and they got the legislature to pass a school climate bill of rights to say, actually, first of all, to eliminate this whole category of willful defiance, because again, when these broad discipline categories, they become these catch-alls. And it's too easy for bias to be exercised. So they achieved that win of having that category eliminated. And another thing that we've seen with the increased presence of police in schools, we've seen more students criminalized, arrested, subjected to school-based arrest, more increased early involvement with the juvenile justice system. So what they did as well in LA is that they limited the role of school police. School police can no longer be involved in routine discipline decisions in LA Unified School District. Those are the kind of things that will really achieve change. And again, it's from community-based organizations, it's from student advocacy, it's from parent advocacy, and getting schools and districts to implement practices like restorative practices. We no longer just say restorative justice, because a lot of students say you can't restore something that was never there. So if we never had justice, you can't restore that. But we can just talk generally about peer mediation. We can talk about social and emotional learning curricula and implementing that. And also we can train our teachers on implicit bias, help them to all acknowledge that they have implicit bias and see how it plays out in their discipline decisions. Those are the kind of things where we're actually starting to see real change being implemented. But again, that started from parents and students advocating for that change within. Those are the kind of things that are turning the tide in terms of the discipline issues that we're seeing. And we're also seeing parents, students, and districts advocate for additional resources. We need school-based counseling, school-based mental health, more services for both students and teachers. Again, these are outside the legal system, but these really hold the most promise for changing the tide. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am so privileged to be here amongst this panel, and I've had a wide variety of emotions just listening to those who have been on the front line and hearing the historical aspect of the civil rights movement. I am so thankful for our President Means, and her putting this together. So I could echo all of the expressions that you've heard earlier. I come from Miami. I've been with the U.S. Attorney's Office for 25 years. I handle strictly civil rights matters, everything from Their housing, which is a critical issue for the African American people. Their housing, voting rights, education, unemployment, with employment discrimination cases, and also police matters. We have had our share of problems in Miami. I'm originally from Miami, and when all of the various incidents were happening all over the country, the tune that came in my mind is, what's going on? You know, old Marvin Gaye. And I'm thinking, you know, this is a problem, and it's so painful. And everywhere I go, I see the look in the eyes of the mothers and the people who have been impacted. You know, I am sick and tired of looking through files and seeing my black brothers' bodies and the impact of the gunshot wounds and all of that. You take that all in, just like you say, you're out there on the front line. When you see all of that, you gotta digest all of that and compartmentalize it in order to get the energy to go forth and try and make a difference and do what you can from the situation where you've been placed. Let me just preface this before I make a disclaimer. The views and expressions and comments I am not necessarily reflect that of the Department of Justice or the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of Florida. Before I get too deep. Because I know that, you know, I get emotional about these things. And I feel the pain. I feel the pain. When I heard about the tragic death of Michael Brown, I thought, you know, it's just the same old thing all over again. You know, I'm from Miami, and that's where Trayvon Martin, that was his hometown. And so my first opportunity to get out there and go out with the Community Relations Division for the Department of Justice, and to go out and try and calm the people and how they were feeling. And it was just like a tinderbox, you know, about to explode. And I'm from way back, so I saw the riots in Miami. So I've experienced all of that firsthand as, you know, I grew up in Miami. And when I thought about, you know, going out and what we were trying to accomplish in trying to bring the community together and kind of calm the fears and the pain, you know, all I could think about is that, you know, I come from a family of 7 children. My grandfather was from Alabama, and I spent all my summers in Alabama, in Selma. So I knew about all of the civil rights movement, and my grandfather marched in jail and was jailed. So I came into practicing law with a desire to do civil rights work and to make a difference in people's lives. Now, the department is very slow in what they do, but there's a process, there are benefits to the Department of Justice and what it can do, because I think it carries a large, heavy stick. And when you walk into a police department and you say, I need to see all your records, I mean, you get everything, because they are not going to say nothing. We have a right to get this information, and we go in there. And I bring you from the context of a situation in Miami. From the inside, as an assistant U.S. attorney, I have the ability to put the pressure on the persons who are in charge there, and they can contact the right folks in Washington. And so that's what I tell the community, because I take all the calls from the community personally. They don't go through somebody. When somebody uses the buzzword civil rights, they call me, and I get the call. So I hear all the problems and what's going on in the community. And unfortunately, I'm it. You know, at one time, there was another AUSA who also worked with me, but he retired. So we do need people to continue to come into the doors so that we have people in place. I may not always agree with what we do, but at least I can try and make a difference and influence what we do. So when we had a situation in Miami where we had 8 African-American black males, very young, shot and killed by the City of Miami Police Department, I said, we got to do something about this. Now, that wasn't the first time. The department had investigated the City of Miami before, 3 years prior to 2011. And we did a full investigation. We went into all of the records, we reviewed all the files, we can get all the data and make a determination that there are pattern practices and policies that do not lend to everyone being treated fairly in our community. So we had these 8 shootings. And so as a result of that, there was pressure coming in from the commission folks and the community saying, we want the Department of Justice to get involved. Now, we will go in under a statute that provides for us to look for pattern or practices of discrimination within departments. We went in, we are still in the midst of that investigation. We had several African-American men in that group who were unarmed. They were all of the incidents, at least 6 of the 8, involved the types of specialized units that the police department have, and that's where we find a lot of the problem. You've got your SWAT teams going in, you've got your tactical robbery units, you've got your K9 units, your gang units. It is targeted, specialized targeted programs, and they go in and it escalates to the point where someone gets killed. So all but one of the shootings occurred in Little Haiti, Overtown, and Liberty City. And as I said before, the investigation is still pending, but the problem, what we're trying to do in doing this investigation is to change the policies and practices of the police department. And what happens is sometimes we don't have people who will file the complaints when they're treated improperly, when a police officer beats them, or if things go wrong on the streets. If we don't have the complaints in the files, then we cannot put together the case and have the sufficient data and evidence that we need to build the case. Now, before I was invited to come here to to St. Louis, I was disturbed by the 2 determinations that were made. The first one came out with regards to Trayvon Martin, and as everybody knows, the department in February of this year announced that it would not proceed in federal criminal charges against George Zimmerman for the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. And that decision came just 2 days before the 3rd year anniversary of Trayvon Martin's death. This decision was based solely on the fact that the high level, the high standard that the department has to get beyond in order to bring charges. But the headlines will always say, oh, officer was cleared, or what have you. Now, Trayvon Martin's situation didn't involve a police officer. It involved a man who thought he was a police officer, or wannabe police officer.
By proxy.
But it's that high burden, just like my sister panelist here indicated, it's such a high bar for the federal government to bring criminal charges against a police officer. or anyone who's violating the civil rights of an individual. And because of that, however, we do have to look at other avenues in terms of addressing the issue that we face in our community. We also had, we also were looking at the department, like I said before, in 3 years prior to beginning this investigation. And so shortly after they made the determination that they couldn't go after George Zimmerman, they, on March 4th, the department announced that it had insufficient evidence once again to do anything with regards to the Michael Brown shooting. Again, the evidence just did not support what would have been necessary in order to build a strong case against Darren Wilson. I know that that's not a good thing for this community, and I know that it didn't make us happy. I know that it hurt to hear that, but at the same time, you know, that is why I say we can't always look to the Department of Justice to make things better in our community. We've got to look to ourselves. It's going to take all of us doing what we need to do in order to make life safe for these little children and for others in our community. But the one thing the department did do is, through their investigation, was able to identify the fact that the Ferguson Police Department's law enforcement practices are directly shaped and perpetuated by racial bias. And I think that that is where we can focus. We can do a lot with that, in that we can have police monitors, and we can put resources into ensuring that they are watched, that we continue to monitor them through federal monitors. And so we have to try and develop through this incident, to try and develop a better police department in Ferguson. It's not going to be perfect, but it will require input from all the people who care. We need, at this point, to have the pastor on the panel, the protesters. When we get ready to shape a plan for how to better improve the department, we go in and we talk to all the different organizations, and we need their input so that we can help to shape that consent decree, where we will have an agreement, and it will have to be a long-term one, where we have to do our best to make sure that they change their policies and their procedures with regards to the training of the officers, with regards to the psychological evaluation of those officers when they're hired, making sure that there's a fair process in the way that people can file complaints against the police department when there are problems, and know that internal affairs will continue to look into the incident and then provide the proper punishment or discipline for those employees, those officers who do not follow the procedures and policies. So those are the types of things that the department can get done and accomplished through our pattern of practice investigations, and that is what we look over the country when we see incidents like Michael Brown incidents and Trayvon Martin type incidents, is to try and fix the problem, fix the system. So there were all kinds of things that the department found in their processing of how people would be put on lists as wanted, so that once a person's name came up, if they just got stopped for a traffic violation, then they were automatically arrested. Those types of things, policies and would just continue to perpetuate the constant harassment of African American males in Ferguson. Fixing tickets for each other, circulating racist jokes, the court system itself in imposing penalties, and for somebody not being able to make it or appear for a court hearing. Those are the types of things that the department found that were just improper. So what I wanted to say is that we have to, as a community, try and see what we can do that can have long-standing impact and hope to try and heal the pains and the troubles that people are experiencing, the frustration that they're experiencing. And we've got to come together with all the leadership that's involved and structure a plan so that we can make things better for this community as well as other communities that are suffering from these tragic incidents. And I just want to say that if there's anything that the department can do by being on the inside, I'm available to do that, and I was hoping that the department will be able to work together with the MBA and be able to strategize and come up with a plan for how we will motivate people and get people mobilized in order to go forward in addressing these types of problems in our communities.
Well, I guess I'm the last person this morning. But first of all, it's just truly a pleasure and a privilege to serve on a panel with so many esteemed and dedicated individuals who have devoted their lives and so many resources to improving the quality of life for so many African Americans. First of all, to Pamela Means, who has just really reinstated the MBA on what it means to stand up in our communities, other than driving Mercedes-Benz and wearing St. John knits, but actually speaking truth to power on the issues that matter in our community. She has shown this city that the MBA is more than just meeting at the Ritz-Carlton for a retreat. So I'm so happy. This means that you are the epitome of what it means to, you don't have to compromise yourself to be recognized. So thank you.
Thank you.
But with that being said, I've heard from so many of the panelists this morning about older people in our community. And I want to be clear because I sit on a board of directors with 64 of many individuals that are aged but seasoned. But I want to be clear because there is a difference between elders and old people. Old people stand around and hold positions in influential organizations and misuse the resources in those organizations. And don't want the young people to come and mobilize because they're afraid they're going to lose in their position. Elders are the people that are in the backdrop that advise you on strategies that work. I also want to be clear on another point. I stand in full support with my brothers and my sisters that are on the front lines in Ferguson at the police department in the cold doing what is necessary to bring attention to the issue. So you all are commendable in itself just for what you do. Yeah. But earlier this year, there were some statements made about Oprah Winfrey. And the statement that she made asking that she needs or that she's looking for leaders to emerge. When I was at the Image Awards, I had the opportunity to ask her about her comments. She said, you can look at my checkbook. I write millions of dollars to groups like the NAACP, the Urban League, and so many others. I support these types of groups. So let me be clear about who I am. She said that her comments were for people to go and see the movie Selma and draft a strategy on how we can move these efforts forward. And one of those key strategies, my friends, and one thing that has not been mentioned, is voting.
That's right.
On April the 7th in the city of Ferguson, there is going to be a municipal election.
That's right.
If we do not encourage the people within the, I wish the media trucks could vote in that election.
Come on
Because
now.
if they could, we would have a black mayor over there. But if we do not mobilize our people and get them to flood the polls on April the 7th in the city of Ferguson, we will be back to square one. And the next story will be, all this attention was for nothing. We're supposed to be talking about what the strategy looks like. One of those people that is utilizing that strategy in a political way is Congressman Emanuel Cleaver with his bill in Washington, D.C. Those are the types of actions that we need. We need to mobilize and identify candidates that reflect our values and have our best interests at heart.
Yes.
And support those candidates and help to find the resources necessary to get them elected into office. Now, let me explain something. In St. Louis County, there are 94 municipalities. 80 of them have their own police department. There is no oversight. There is no accountability. You have municipal court judges, many of them who are in private practice as well, that have extreme conflicts of interest. Right here in St. Louis County, we have judges that have liens against their homes, that owe taxes to St. Louis County, that are unethical and immoral, yet they are evaluating our same young black men that are in line around the corner on court night on what it is that they need to do to get their affairs in order.
Yes.
So number one, it starts at the voting booth.
Yes.
Because there has to be a greater level of accountability there. Just literally weeks before Michael Brown was killed, for the first time in St. Louis County history, an African-American woman ran against prosecuting attorney Bob McCullough.
Yes, she did. Leslie Tolliver.
She was trounced
Yes, she was. Yes,
by
she
the
was.
machine known as Bob McCullough. Because we what? Didn't vote. That's exactly right. And all of a sudden, Bob McCullough became known in national news. We have the opportunity within our communities to change that. So many people ask all the time about Bob McCullough. He's been serving for over 20 years, has been re-elected time and time again, and has hundreds of thousands of dollars in his war chest. And in addition to that is one of the prime reasons why we have a new county executive that beat an African American. So my friends, it starts politically. We have to be politically engaged on April the 7th. It starts here. And then we need to get mobilized for our school board elections.
Yes.
Because we have school boards where the student population is 80% African American and there's only one black on the school board. How does that make sense, friends? Another thing that we need to take a look at as I continue to see it is mentorship. You have many people within our communities that are discouraged about the lack of opportunities in their neighborhoods.
That's right.
We need people to have an opportunity to see that you can be a Judy Draper, that it is possible to be a judge and be an African American. Those individuals need to see those people within their schools on a monthly basis, speaking to them about what it takes to go to law school, what it takes to be a police officer. And another thing that we need to speak to our young people about, you know, I go to a primarily Caucasian institution. I went to white schools all my life. And so I, for some crazy reason, was under the impression that if you wore Brooks Brothers or you drove a certain type of car, you wouldn't necessarily be racially profiled. Or they couldn't throw you around on the side of the car like they do some that live in other parts of town. But my wake-up moment was when I saw what they did to Martise Johnson at the UVA. An honor student that they beat on the pavement as he yelled, "I go to UVA." Well, you can yell, "I go to Howard." I go to Florida A&M. I go to Harvard, but to them, it does not matter. Because racial profiling and police brutality knows no education level, and it knows no income bracket, it doesn't know Jack and Jill, and it doesn't know any of those things. This morning, it is my hope that organizations like the NBA will continue to be in the community. What you all are doing, I believe it is today, give back the guns.
Voter mobilization, expungement, and gun safety.
That's important. We have to continue to go to the clients that we serve.
Yes.
They're not going to come to us down here at the Renaissance.
That's right.
So it's very encouraging to see that we are going into their our neighborhoods and providing the resources and the services that are needed to bring those people along the way. So that's really all that I have to say this afternoon.
Right now.
I came up in a political family. My grandmother says that I should talk about the shoulders of greatness that I came riding to town on. I am the son of Angela and John Gaskin. I'm the grandson of Edward and Esther Haywood. Edward Haywood was from East St. Louis.
Yes, he was.
The first person in his family to go to college, who raised two daughters that went on to college and get advanced degrees. So I'm here today, the one thing that needs to be taught in our communities, that we weren't the first ones to drive a Mercedes. We weren't the first ones to be on the top floor of the Met Building downtown. We need to teach our young people that before we were driving Jags, all we had was rags. So I'm not gonna go there this afternoon, but that's just something that I wanted to share. If you're not a member of the Urban League or the NAACP or the NBA, you need to get your membership. If you are not a member of the NAACP, we have so many people that call our office on a day-to-day basis, but when you ask them to come to a meeting to get involved, to register people to vote, they want to act like they don't know you. So this afternoon, I encourage you to get involved in your communities and whatever it is, whether it's the PTA, whether it's the Urban League, whether it's the NAACP, or whomever it may be, but get involved to find out how you can be the change that you want to see in your community.
All right. And we do have time for questions and answers, but before we do that, we don't have to wait until the panel is over to clap and shout now for the phenomenal job.
Yes.
And I just want to say again to these youth who are here, you need to understand that we are committed to standing with you, standing by you, fighting for you in the levels that you don't have access to. That when I look at my research, which talks about academic and social resiliency, at the end of the day, this is the face of resiliency. That we need to understand that it's time to redefine how we look at the quality and the context of the experiences of our kids and how that translates. And at the end of the day, like I said, how we classify what resilience is this is actual resilience. These are kids who have been tested, and who are here, and who are working and fighting for us. So again, we just can't applaud you enough. Before we open up for question and answers, I think I've established a good relationship with you. I've been fair. So now I'm going to be a little tough. Because one of the things that I'm finding in this new orientation of panelization is that when we get to the Q&A, we forget that questions start with who, what, when, where. Good you, right? And so we ask these panelists to come because they bring a unique perspective and expertise. We don't necessarily need that from the audience. What we need you to do is to ask questions that again are going to clear up anything that you need further clarity about, or also that are going to enlighten us because they're going to tap again into elements of the tremendous expertise and experience that our panelists bring to us. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll ask people to line up at the microphone, and while we're doing that, I want to take another moderator's liberty to just join in the echo of thanks for the leadership and the vision of this particular chair and president of the National Bar Association. I will say this, that a lot of people don't know this, but Pamela and I go way back. And we're not that old, but the fact that we can say we met 30 years ago as a part of the youth group of HBCU leaders who started an organization along with Darryl Parks, he was one of the founders, called the National Coalition of Black College Student Governments. And we formed a group, created it from the ground up because we saw a need to make sure that the unique perspective of student leaders at HBCUs was a critical part of shaping the conversation about what needed to happen in Black America. And then, as God would have it, there was a very progressive admissions council at the University of Iowa College of Law, such that when I walked into my first day of law school and we were in 1L orientation, seated next to me was a Negro from East St. Louis. And next to her was me, a Negro from Miami. And Iowa hasn't been the same since. And so I'm really thankful about that. But again, I say that just to demonstrate that what you see in terms of her leadership and vision is not new. This is something that she has been doing all of her life. And that element of how her identity has shaped the complexion of this era of the NBA, I think is a critical part of what we need to embrace as we move forward. So thank you for allowing me to do this, and thank you for all of you. All right, we'll open the floor now with a question.
Good morning. My first question is for for Ms. James. Since you work with the Department of Justice, I did have a meeting with the Earl Saunders, and he came and sat with me and my attorney in September of last year. And in December, they did decide to send my son's case to the criminal section. And I want to know if you can help me and my family get a contact name.
Identify who you are.
My name is Tony Taylor, mother of Kerry Ball Jr. And Mr. Earl Saunders, the investigator over Ferguson right now, he came and sat down with me and my attorney, and he said back when Chief Mocha was the chief, they did launch an investigation on the St. Louis City Police Department. So since it's now sent to the criminal section, I have called and checked on it, but he did tell me that they take like a month to get back to me. So I just wanted to see if you can help our family get a contact.
If you will give me your telephone number, I will look into it and find out who is actually overseeing that investigation.
Okay.
And get back with you.
Then my next question is for Mr. Gasket. We have been in close contacts with Adolphus Pruitt. He has helped my family extremely amount. Since you went to NAACP and you know about the city of St. Louis and Ferguson, I wanted to know, can you start talking about us as a whole? Because we need more unity. And Jennifer Joyce is just a baddest monster as Bob McCauley. And somebody needs to know her background. That's right. We need her out. We need her out.
So I'll just start off by saying that I am here as an attorney because I grew up in Philadelphia, and I spent a lot of time praying that my brothers wouldn't be killed in Philadelphia. And so since that is my orientation, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the fact that you're here, and you started your story off by talking about someone being killed by a government agent. You're here, you here, and all of you started off by talking about people being killed by government agents. And I think we often come to these spaces and we think of strategies that don't attack that idea. So my question is, because we have a lot of prosecutors in the room, we have folks who generally speaking have been silent about what our government has been doing here and abroad as it relates to governments killing people, because I'm not sure how filing a complaint is going to stop someone's child from being killed. I'm not sure how voting is going to stop someone's child from being killed, let alone places that there is no voting. So my question is, because I think we need a paradigm shift, not a politician or a policy or program. I think we need a paradigm shift. My question is, how do we make it impossible for governments to justify killing people? That's the question. How do we make it impossible for governments to justify killing people?
Thank you. Look, if we're going to stay in this country, then we need to learn to manipulate the government of the country. And next week, for example, Congressional Black Caucus is doing a political jump workshop in Ferguson at the Well Street United Methodist Church. Now here's the reason. We came to town about 6 weeks ago with about $15,000 to give to candidates. We decided not to do it because the races were blacks versus blacks. So we said, okay, we're not going to do that. We'll do a workshop to hopefully help everybody get out the vote. But here's the deal: if you got 70% of the population and you voted 6%, those folk have no regard for you. You pose no debt, no threat to them at all. If we vote, we hire the police chief. We hire the city manager, and we tell them. And you know, if you have the right police chief, you know, the issue is you get caught in brutality, you're fired. We had a police officer 2 days ago beat a man, hit a man 17 times in the head after throwing him on the ground just outside of Detroit. We find out that Detroit fired him for falsifying information by beating another black guy. Now, you know, if you have and he had to leave Detroit because they had a black mayor. He said you're not going to police here. So I think that to say that the government has no role is I can understand how you feel that way, but I'm just telling you, you know, if you vote and you put people in place, that stops that stuff. Look, right now in Ferguson, you have taxation by citation, and that troubles me in a lot of ways because you know you are building the city budget by strobe lights, and you stop that with people who give the orders, and there's no reason, not one reason, that makes any sense why we are not in control of Ferguson, Missouri's political framework.
I just say, I'm going to beg to differ on you, my dear brother. For this reason, though, that you can have a police department that has a culture of contempt for poor black and brown youth with black policemen. Yes! With brown police. Because today talk about this in Mississippi. Yes! In Philadelphia, we got black power in such a way. Stokely Carmichael, Charles Hamilton, in their book Black Power couldn't conceive of, and they still killing our precious young people. Now, why is that so? Well, one reason it's so is because these police departments do not want to send policemen to jail. I don't want to see them fired. I want them to go to jail. This is crimes against humanity. But then it gets even more delicate. Because we tell the young folks to vote, and yes, they ought to vote. But they vote, they get a black president, black attorney general, Blacks cabinet security and homeland security, and they still killing our children, and not one policeman going to jail. So then you say, hey, what's going on here? We got a system that is abysmal failure when it comes to the precious humanity of young black and brown people, and we got black faces in high places that can't translate the justice on the ground. So we gotta be honest with our young folks. We support the folks in there, but when you get in there and there's still hemorrhage taking place, and the body's still falling down, and the blood is still flowing, then you either need a system change or the system is so rotten.
There you go.
It's so empty. And none of us have an answer. I mean, I'm a revolutionary Christian, so I don't care what the world thinks. I'm in the world, but not of it. I don't care. But at the same time, I also recognize that the system itself is like the Titanic. So we got to support our brothers and sisters in the Department of Justice to the degree that they can function. But when you got all these black folk up here and all this black death down here, that's a Keith Sweat moment. Something just ain't right. And you got to be able to tell that truth. So if it's critical of Obama, we don't need to be marching with his hands up. We need to put pressure on the president to say we want federal prosecution of the police who killing young people. And if we had a white president, she needs to put him in jail too. It's a moral issue. And we didn't have enough black folk. That was my critique of Brother Sharpton. Damn it. Sharpton come here, extension of the White House. I love Sharpton, he's a courageous brother, but he's too tied into the powers that be. Charles Howard, the brother I talked about, the father that's in it with Gertrude and the other one, he was disbarred because he had a critique of the government. He didn't care what color they were of the government. And I can tell you one more thing, that we have very little spiritual and moral authority if we can allow 500 Palestinian babies to be killed in 50 days and not one person raised a mumbling voice about it and didn't say we're concerned about our children. Palestinian children have exactly the same status as any other children. And we can't just be in love with black children and act as if somehow their value does not have the same status. That's the kind of challenge the Black Freedom Movement is about. They say, Brother West, you can't translate that on the ground. You don't say. Because this is a moral and a spiritual issue as well as a political.
I just want to say something to this young lady here. If you want a membership and get involved, I have some memberships here from St. Louis County and NACP, and you all really need to join so you can get help and we can show you some things. Just because we are older, that doesn't mean that. Don't separate the wisdom. But I want to say something to you, young lady. St. Louis City and St. Louis County are two different entities.
We know that. I know that.
And there's a St. Louis City NACP, Adolphus Pruitt.
Yes.
He needs to do what you want him to do there. St. Louis County, like John said, we got all those municipalities. Nobody can go in St. Louis County and run Ferguson.
But you're confusing our out-of-towners. That's why I said, I've been traveling a lot and they didn't.
Yeah, but that's what I know. We've had this.
I want to have a sidebar conversation afterwards, but okay, you can catch them afterwards. I'm sure they'll stay around. All right? Okay, next person. Thank you.
How you doing? Indict, convict, send them killer cops to jail because the whole damn system is guilty as hell. These are not incidents, these are tragedies. And I have 4 sons and over 12 nephews, and that's why I'm in this. And I've been here and I'm not going nowhere. And I'm gonna fight justice for the rest of my life.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr.
I have a very simple question. President Means and the National Bar Association went all around these United States doing these Know Your Rights seminars, and they were tremendous. I mean, people came out, and she should be applauded for her vision. It was tremendous, Dr. West, John, you know about him, Representative, all y'all, I mean, 22 cities, man, around the country. The question is really, really simple, Monica. How do we sustain this momentum? Because, you know, every time we have a Trayvon, a Michael Brown, Dr. West, we talked about Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Alicia Thomas in Los Angeles. Boy, we're gonna march, we're gonna rally, and it's gonna be, I mean, energy and everything. And after that, no, it's church mice. And the reason that this comes full-fledged, when we were here in Ferguson, a young man came up to me and said, you know, Attorney Crump, man, I love what y'all doing, I love y'all fighting, y'all bringing the attention, but don't you know when you all leave and those cameras go, they gonna treat us just the same way they've been treating us. And they gonna pay us back for what you doing, Crump. And I'm saying, how can we prevent that where this could be sustained? I have not got that solution in New York, Ferguson, Sanford, Los Angeles, and I am desperately, this ain't a law question. This is a fundamental Black society question. I would love your perspective. This is an NBA issue that I'm going to try to follow in Pam's footsteps because we got to have the momentum. And if we don't, we're going to see Tamir Rice, and he's 12 years old. He's the face of police brutality in America now. At 12-year-old kids. So brothers and sisters, help us. We, you know, Reverend Means said, the young will lead. So we turn to y'all. How do we sustain y'all staying engaged? Okay. No, you go for it.
Okay.
One of the things
I think that is so crucial is that I think the support, because when there is no support, you talked about Al Sharpton and so many others have came, and when these issues happen, it drains the community, and we bring good offerings, you know. Yeah, we was asked to bring up, you know, all that kind of good stuff. But there's nothing to come back to the community in the sense of how can we further this? Because one of the things we've been trying to, listen, we protest day in, day out. You know, we're gonna get 400, 500 people, we're gonna send a mass text and we're gonna get them out there because we want to sustain the momentum. But the thing is, as she said, okay.
You don't have to get on my panel.
Okay, I'm just gonna say it.
Just speak.
As she said, financially, you know, I have to, you know, some people be like, listen, I ain't got no gas, so I have to give them gas to come, because you can't do this for free. And if we have nobody ever putting money back into the young people, then they can't learn the system. You know, because some people, as mama, you know, we try to go support her for her son. To drive from Ferguson to South City, that's gonna be $15 worth of gas. And if we want, and we carpool, but if you carpool, you gotta give people some finances to make that happen. And I think that the biggest problem right now is the lack of funding to do what we need to do. That people are sending money, but the community is not seeing the money. I was in a meeting and someone said that there have not been millions of dollars. Well, I disagree. There have been millions of dollars came through Ferguson, and the community, and especially our young people, have not even seen the finance. There are things we're wanting to do to continue the movement and continue the awareness, but because of the funding, so we gotta wait, we gotta, you know, bring the news back here again so that the attention can come, and then when the news is here, some funding will come, but not really, just to get some cases of water. But you know, so.
Okay. And after the young people speak, I'm gonna sit down, but gas doesn't coordinate. Yeah, I'll say, how do we answer that young man question? How do we stop the payback when these cameras leave?
Okay. Until the cameras up. Keep the cameras up.
If these little white children are getting shot every 28 hours for 10 years, white brothers and sisters don't have to stay in the street for 6 months.
There you go.
Something else happened. Something else happened.
Something else happened.
Pressure at the top. You see what I mean? And one of the things is we got to get more of our middle class professionals who standing in the street with them, because we got some power too. We don't want to leave them dangling out there. We got to get some of our highly visible folk. You see what I mean? Let Kanye get lost out there for about 3 days. We're not worried about no press. We got press every second. And he bring Kim too? Shit. But we got to keep this in perspective. There's always, black folks always got to do all the extra work. Whereas if the white children, this person is our children, this person is their children, if their children get shot like this, they don't have to be in the street 6 months. That's very important to point out. Because something happens at the top. Department of Justice moves quicker when it's Newtown, Connecticut, as opposed to further. But I will get young folks, I'm sorry.
Okay, to piggyback off of what Bishop said, yes, we need funding, we need resources. However, when you guys give your resources, you give them to these big groups. We never see a dime for anything. They give it to, no disrespect, they give it to places like the Urban League, they go do their thing. Then the Better Family Life, the NAACP.
Whatever organization
I'm outside.
that made up.
I lost my job being outside. Nobody came and gave me anything. So, you know, you say, what can we do to support? Support us. Forget these big name people. Support these individuals who are out there risking their lives, losing their jobs. I have a 4-year-old son that I had to take care of off of government assistance that I barely got because I'm not poor enough to collect whatever they want to give. So stop giving it to these big name people. I got a card right here with my name, my number, and my email address on it. My brother got one too. I'll give you these cards. I'll get it back to who needs it and who deserves it so we can move forward with this. Not these big name people.
I'll take this question and then we're going to stop here so we can get yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Dennis. I'm a second-year law student. I'm really humbled to be here and listen to all of you. So the question was asked earlier, how do we get the government to stop murdering people, right? And the answer was, we have to vote. So before I say that, I want to say 3 names. Ayanna Jones, Renisha McBride, and Alicia Rudd. African American women were the highest number of voters in the past 2 presidential elections.
Can we get a question, please?
So the question is the answer, do we need more voting when African American women were the highest voters in the past 2 presidential elections?
Yes, Veronica.
I just wanted to say something. We are a room of attorneys. And I know that there was an 80-some page report of what the department found and what it did. And the determination was insufficient evidence. I just think that sometimes we just accept that. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not speaking for the department, I'm speaking as a mother. Sometimes we may have to look beneath the surface of what's there, but we need a team of people who are willing to do that, to take it apart if necessary, to see. Because if there is no pressure to bear, that it will be the determination. The last time that I recall the actual federal Department of Justice doing an actual case was Rodney King. And I'm sure there's some others. But that was the most memorable one that I can recall. But they said insufficient evidence to go forward on federal charges. How many of us as attorneys have gone forward on cases that it's always a risk, there's always a gamble. And you can't always have the perfect case. But sometimes you just don't know what a jury will do. And sometimes you just gotta take that chance for your client. And we, the people of the United States, is the client for the department. When they go forward to bring actions and to bring federal charges against individuals, There are prosecutors in my office who go forward with less, evidence on cases. But they're doing it and they're prosecuting, a lot of times winning. But the department sometimes is not brave or courageous enough when things in the scale's not completely balanced and it's not so clear. But if we looked at the results of the investigations done to determine, okay, we just want to check you, hold them accountable. You did your work. We know they spent time. We know they were there. But is there more that's there that was not discovered by them? If there's more that we can look into, I think that we should do that. And we owe it to ourselves because we keep saying we want the officers put in jail. If we can't bring actions against them, nobody's going to jail.
All right. With that, we know we have the day of service, so we're going to need people to transition out, but I do want to pass it over to President Means.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Before you leave, we don't prostitute the mothers who are victims of this case of police brutality. But I did want to invite some mothers here so you can know that Missouri has many faces of mothers of police brutality. So we personally invited these mothers here today. Can you stand? And these are mothers who have lost their sons. They were courageous enough to be here with us today. Let me tell you something, we're getting ready to leave. At the National Bar Association, we're saying, change the law. We are experts on the law. On a local level, we have written a law. Take it to your city council. Stricter mental health testing. Mandatory de-escalation of force training. And mandatory diversity, relation, and culture training. On a state level, mandatory independent investigation and independent prosecutors in all police brutality cases. We've written the law. Texas, Louisiana, Missouri, Florida have introduced our state legislation. Missouri said they wouldn't even hear our legislation, but Reverend Tommy Pearson introduced it. We will be testifying on Monday at Jeff City. I'm not paying your way to Jeff City, but you need to get there if this means something to you. 7 o'clock. Jeff City. On a federal level, here's what you can do for me, Cleveland, if you don't do nothing else before I leave. Introduce a bill that changes the standard that was introduced by the Supreme Court when they got it wrong and said that a police officer can use any force that is necessary to stop the force that they believe they're under. That's why you see this. Because you can vote, but you don't change the law. They're going to still get shot. Because the standard is arbitrary and capricious. We lawyers, and we've drafted the law. We'll hand it to you. You don't even have to say it's ours. You can have ownership of it. It's going to take all of us doing this. So you showed up here today. Now show your people you love them. Take off your suit, get a shirt, and meet me out in the black communities to tell them that April the 7th matters. 3 council seats up. In another black community, black woman running for mayor. We're not telling nobody who to vote for. We're just saying exercise your right to vote. Real quickly, my 2 past presidents that are here, past President Simmons, stand up and be recognized. But I must say that there is one brother that has energized me and lifted my arms sometimes when I was weak, and he never knew it. But every time I was just about to give up, I would receive a text from this dude in the National Bar Association. I don't belong to his state, I don't belong to his caucus, but every time I needed God to send me somebody to encourage me, he sent me Bob Harris. Thank you all for coming. I hope you were challenged. I hope so. We have front lobby for the buses out to Ferguson. Take a shirt. Don't meet me out there in those suits, because I'm going to send you back over to the rear side. T-shirts are in the back. 7 p.m. on Monday.
Okay, that's it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it out to the thing over in, it's actually in Delwood. It's next to Ferguson. If I do, I might be back up. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Excuse me, you guys.
Oh,
I forgot to
hold
say
on.
this.
Hold on.
Our bill, our state bill, is also being heard on the floor in Texas. Thanks to this young man right here, this Campbell brother. This is a law student, and our bill is being heard in Texas. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it now.